Wisdom from Above by Karen Ganon. My message and my preaching were not with wise and persuasive words, but with a demonstration of the Spirit's power, so that your faith might not rest on man's wisdom, but on God's power. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 4 to 5. Amelia Bedelia is a classic young readers series that many of today's adults recall with a reminiscent smile. Amelia was a live-in housekeeper for a wealthy, middle-aged couple. The bulk of the story's humor came from her inability to understand anything except literal language. When instructed to put out the lights when she left the room, she unscrewed all the bulbs and hung them outside on the clothesline. Draw the drapes. Steal the bases. You get the idea. She understood the literal meaning of the words, but could not extrapolate the intended meaning. Humor based on puns and idioms often relies on this disconnect. Though unlikely to amuse adults, Amelia Bedelia books are still wildly hilarious to the 8 and under set. In real life, though, misinterpretations over the meaning of language are more serious. Consider the Pharisees in the New Testament. They were intelligent people and societal leaders. They studied and memorized the scriptures daily. They knew the law, but because they did not know God's character, they misinterpreted his meaning. The teachers of the law were outraged that Jesus repeatedly healed suffering individuals on the Sabbath. John chapter 5, Matthew chapter 12. In the parable of the 2 men praying in the temple, Luke chapter 18, the Pharisee judged himself favored by God because he followed the literal directions of the law. Yet, it was the second man who pleased God by his humble, repentant spirit. The religious leaders kept missing the character, the heart of God. The disciples, during their years with Jesus, often misunderstood the meaning of Jesus' words. Even after the resurrection, when Jesus instructed them to wait for the Holy Spirit to come on them before they went out into the world, they demonstrated their misunderstanding of his kingdom. Acts chapter 1, verse 4 to 6. Yet, after Pentecost, the apostles spoke with power and authority. During his missionary journeys, Paul emphasized that it was the Holy Spirit, not any wisdom of his own, that enabled his message to change the world forever. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 4 to 5. True wisdom, godly wisdom, must come from God. When thoughts and words enter our minds, they can be interpreted in part by our backgrounds, experiences, personalities, and the sins that so easily entangle us. The Bible is clear that our minds need renewal. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. So as we read or listen to God's words, let us, like Paul, invite them to pass through his Spirit who dwells within us, who has the very character and heart of the Father. Have you ever misunderstood something to the point where nothing made sense? What did you do about it? What is the best way to seek true and godly wisdom for your life?